gathered on the 8th of May 2024 to the 10th of May 2024 are a group of young people who feel unheard and who feel misrepresented at the United Nations. This is a side event to the United Nations Civil Society Organizations Conference happening at the United Nations offices in Nairobi on the 9th and 10th of May. The Nairobi Declaration on the Unheard Youth Voices on the sidelines of the UN Civil Society Conference on the Summit of the Future. Whereas we are the youth of the world, hailing from diverse ethnic, religious, cultural, and economic backgrounds, united in our recognition of the intrinsic, inviolable, and unalienable dignity of every individual, acknowledging the sanctity of life from conception to natural death as a foundational truth that guides our principles and actions, affirming that the unborn person is a child who needs special safeguards and care, including appropriate legal protection before as well as after birth. Recognizing the family as the natural and fundamental group unit of society and government, entitled to protection by society and the state, as enshrined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 16. Affirming the importance of love, compassion, and unity as the pillars upon which a prosperous and harmonious society is built. Standing firm in our conviction that the traditional family structure, composed of a biologically male husband and a biologically female wife, united in marriage and collaborating in parenting children as father and mother, is the cornerstone of civilization. Upholding the freedom of religion and the preservation of traditional cultures that promote societal values and principles, fostering an environment of mutual respect and understanding. Asserting the right of every child to an education that is family-centered, age-appropriate, informative, and respectful of the prior rights of parents to choose and guide the education of their children, affirming cultural and religious values. Upholding the dignity from conception till natural death of individuals living with disabilities, including those living with disorders of sex development. Emphasizing that the health of our planet is inextricably linked to the well-being of its inhabitants. Alarmed by the urgent need to address the challenges posed by corporate greed in propelling climate change, pollution, and the depletion of natural resources. Noting further that sovereignty in managing environmental sustainability is fundamental to securing a prosperous future for all. Now, therefore, we, the undersigned, do hereby declare our unwavering commitment to these truths and principles. We call upon governments, institutions, civil societies, communities, and families
the declaration Article 1, affirmation of human dignity and the sanctity of human life. To promote every human being's intrinsic value and unalienable dignity from conception to natural death be universally recognized and protected. Article 2, the family as the cornerstone of society. To reaffirm the family's role as the natural and fundamental group unit of society and government, advocating for its protection and support by society and the state.
Article 3, right to life and reproductive health. To recognize the International Conference on Population and Development consensus that there is no international right to abortion and ensure that the sanctity of life is protected from conception to natural death. Article 4, religious freedom and cultural preservation. To create a world where religious freedom is protected, honored, respected, and where traditional cultures that promote societal values are preserved.
Article 5, education and parental responsibility. To ensure that every child has the right to education with age-appropriate information and to respect the prior right of parents to choose the kind of education that shall be given to their children, as declared in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 6. Article 6, support for persons living with disability. To recognize and support individuals living with disability, including those living with disorders of sex development, ensuring their dignity and rights are upheld. Additionally, revamping their national policy and regulation on persons with disabilities to include persons with disorders of sex development.
Article 7, regulation of technology, to challenge state parties to develop stringent national guidelines to ensure the accuracy of technological innovations and prevent censorship of divergent views while upholding freedom of expression. Access to artificial intelligence, AI technologies, while it must be open to all, should be regulated. Article 8, digital public infrastructure, to encourage significant investment from governments of state parties in the digital public infrastructure, DPI sector, with the robust ethical mechanisms to address cybersecurity and data privacy, especially delinking personal health data from the public digital records.
Article 9, commitment to environmental sustainability. 9.1, sustainable practices and education. To encourage the integration of sustainable practices into all aspects of society, including education, agriculture, health, industry, and urban development. Promote education curricula that emphasize the importance of environmental stewardship and sustainable living. 9.2, conservation and biodiversity. To reaffirm their commitment to the conservation of natural habitats and biodiversity, recognizing the critical role of ecosystems in maintaining climate balance and the necessity of protecting endangered species and natural resources. 9.3, green technologies and innovation. To recognize the potential of green technologies and innovation in driving sustainable economic growth and propose increased investment in research and development of renewable energy and sources and sustainable materials. 9.4, climate action and policy. To enact and enforce policies that reduce carbon emissions by the major pollutants, promote renewable energy, and encourage sustainable practices across all sectors. 9.5, youth participation in environmental governance. To recognize the unique insights and contributions of youth in environmental governance. Young people should be given a platform to participate meaningfully in environmental decision-making processes at local, national, regional, and international levels. In the spirit of unity and with steadfast resolve, we commit to championing the principles enshrined in this declaration. We pledge to be the vanguards of human dignity, environmental stewardship, and societal well-being, Through collaborative efforts and unwavering advocacy, we shall endeavor to forge a future where the sanctity of life, the strength of the family unity, and the reservation of our planet are held paramount. We stand tall with a collective force dedicated to nurturing a world that honors and embraces sustainable progress for generations to come. We therefore invite the member states of the United Nations, civil society organizations, faith-based organizations, cultural institutions, professional bodies, academia, and other stakeholders to join us in upholding these tenets for the betterment of society and advancement of human dignity. Thank you. We beg for your pardon on the second question. The second question, I think. Thank you very much. It has been known in the recent times that the United Nations has adopted a number of definitions in many instances, for example, on human rights, among others, which definitions have been construed to reflect the wishes of certain persons and leaving out the voice or the wishes of the greater part of the world. For example, when they construe human rights definitions to adopt LGBTQI rights, in quotes, most of the societies in Africa do not believe in LGBTQI rights. So when you make a definition of human rights to include the rights of LGBTQI and the many other letters in that group, you deny or suppress the voices on the other parts of the world, actually most of the voices. For example, I come from Uganda. Recently, the Ugandan parliament passed the Anti-Homosexuality Act, which was actually upheld by the decision of the Constitutional Court. And it is unfathomable to think that the United Nations is representing the voice of Ugandans or the voice of East Africans that are mostly against the notion of LGBTQI and those many other letters, rights. It is unfathomable to think that the United Nations is representative of East Africa when the United Nations chooses to adopt a definition of human rights that includes LGBTQI and those other notions in that group. So the United Nations has severally brought up definitions that are not representative of the universal understanding of certain aspects of life, including human rights, okay? And then in another aspect, the United Nations will advocate or has in a number of instances advocated for abortion as a right. you know. And yet, when you look at many of the countries around the world, most of the countries are against abortion. So the United Nations chooses to represent a few voices as against the bigger community of nations. So in such instances, we feel the United Nations has not given platform to the definition of a number of aspects of life that is generally understood in the world. So in that regard, we feel that the United Nations should be more accommodative to the views of the bigger world community, including defining many of the different aspects that I've highlighted. All right, thank you very much. Rightfully so, you have said that in your question, you expressed the fact that each and every person has a right to express themselves. And in that regard, no, I'm not going to speak specifically for Kenya, but I've followed Kenya a number of times. Let me speak in the context of Uganda, where I come from. And we have people advocating almost in every part of the world, you know, expressing themselves as for abortion or as for LGBTQI and all. However, you know, every nation or most of the nations, many or most of the sovereign nations in the world, save for a few, do have the principle of democracy, you know. And you know, democracy promotes the aspect of decisions made by many, you know, for how they should be governed or how the well-being of the society should be taken, what direction the society should take. I gave you an example earlier of the recent decision by the Ugandan parliament to emphasize the criminalization of homosexuality and homosexuality acts in Uganda. Of course, I'm aware that there are a number of Ugandans, some of the Ugandans that have come up to advocate for homosexuality, including in the parliament. So when you look at the vote in the parliament of Uganda, it was the majority of the parliamentarians against 2, okay? So the 2 parliamentarians expressed themselves. But then, when they expressed themselves, the majority of the parliamentarians expressed themselves with a bigger voice as against the 2. And that is democracy. So when Uganda chooses to take that direction, no one in this world has a right to you know, curtail the voice of Uganda as a nation or to speak against Uganda as a nation, because Uganda, in democratic principles, as a sovereign state, has decided or chosen to take a particular direction. And you know, we have to respect those directions. And you know, I can give you an example. I know for a fact that the number of countries in the number of countries that that do not promote polygamy, as an example, okay? So regardless of your choice, if one is a Muslim in that country, regardless of the fact that their faith allows them to marry probably a maximum of 4 wives, they cannot be allowed to marry 4 wives in such countries. And I know a number of European countries do not allow for polygamy. So should we then force European nations, because of the right to choice or because of the right to expression, should we force the European nations to then allow for polygamy so that the Muslims in those countries can willingly exercise their religious freedoms of faith? No. So every nation has a right to choose which direction they take. So Uganda chose to stand against homosexuality because that's how Uganda believes she should, you know, exercise her sovereignty in pursuant to marriage or sexuality. And so, similarly, Kenya has also made certain decisions in that regard. I believe Tanzania has made a number of decisions that that represent their voice as a country. I know one of us is going to speak for Kenya, since the question was directed to Kenya, and probably give us a context of what Kenya ascribes for in that regard and what has been happening in Kenya. But I was only happy to give you a response in the context of Uganda, where I come from. And thank you.
Okay, let me.
Okay, all right. Let me allow Ms. Njeri to come to firstly respond on the context of Kenya in the first question, and then respond that question as well. Yeah, to just have a fair representation of everyone here. Thank you. Oh, yes. Thank you. Thank you. I am Opolote Emmanuel Solomon from Uganda. Thank you so much.
In regards to your question, specifically to the Kenyan context, you expressed that in Kenya, we have groups and organizations who are advocating for the right to abortion and the presence and recognition of the LGBTQ+ community as an identity, as a people, and therefore should be given their rights, right? That was your question. And to answer that, it is true. It has happened in Kenya. We have the groups that advocate for that, as well as people pushing for the recognition and the promotion of the right to abortion. Our point of view, that is what you were asking about, our point of view to this is that why don't we just provide an alternative to abortion? All this money that is being spent on and seems to be channeled towards funding for the provision and acquisition of abortion services, how about channel these same funds into taking care of what we are calling unwanted pregnancies? This might be pregnancies coming in as a result of rape. What about offering an alternative to counseling the mothers who have gone through this, or the pregnant women who have gone through this? What about institutionalizing homes that take care of the children that come by as a result of this, where the parent is either not able to take care of the child that they will give birth to, or does not want to keep the child that they are giving birth to? Then you also mentioned about the presence of the LGBTQI+ community. I think we need to understand that the United Nations as a system is indeed failing us, because now it seems that it is not serving its foundational purpose, which should be a platform, a premium platform, where all its member states are free to stand, speak, and address issues that they are currently facing. Nobody has where they are free to address the issues that they are going through in the world, or rather issues of world peace and security, where states should be able to maintain their sovereignty, where the sovereignty of each state should not be interfered with, where states should be free to make their own decisions, as long as it is in line with what is accepted as an international norm. We feel and we can see that the United Nations system has now changed to be a forum where agenda is secretly and so forcefully yet pushed for, even in countries where the same values are not shared in their national value system. That is why we sit here feeling misrepresented, misunderstood, because they then release youth declarations on the Summit of the Future talking about transformative education, when it is not the truth. That is not the representation of all the youth of the world. That is not the voice of every other young person. That is just the voice of a few people who are not speaking entirely on behalf of every other young person. That is what we feel about the UN system. If you could please just repeat your second question, I'd be glad to take it. Your last question.
Can he answer?
What steps are you planning as the Kenya professional to address this issue, if the voice is still will not be heard, to advocate for this voice, so that we can have a fair representation of the UN?
Okay. The first answer to that is this gathering that is present here. Coming up with an alternative youth declaration to what the United Nations will be releasing today or even tomorrow at their Youth Blast is the first step towards ensuring that we are represented in the UN system and in those dialogue platforms. Secondly, we do not have to be there to say what we have to say. If we cannot be admitted there, we will gladly say it elsewhere. And that is why we are saying it here and now, that whatever is being decided there is not the true representation of our feelings, not just our feelings, or rather our beliefs and the truth about that. The alternatives that we would offer, right, and ensuring that we have effective implementation of what we have shared and future good representation is to be present, right from our local communities to the social media to picketing in our ministries. We will do what we can to ensure that the authentic truth is shared with everybody.
I would like to share more light concerning your questions that you said. What's our view as Christians concerning other Christians in Kenya that advocates for LGBTQ rights and all that? What I would like to say here is a true Christian will not advocate for LGBTQ rights, because a true believer is someone that operates within the context of biblical standard. So whoever that said, I am advocating for LGBTQ rights, I'm advocating for abortion, that person is not considered a Christian, because a Christian is someone that, operates within the context of biblical standard. A Christian is someone that shines the light of Christ. And what's the biblical view concerning LGBTQ? In the book of Leviticus 18 verse 22, you see it clearly that God has condemned the activities of LGBTQ. So whoever that said, I'm a Christian and I'm advocating for LGBTQ should go and rethink. That person is not a true believer. Thank you very much.
Any other questions?